Dopamine gets talked about like it's the chemical of pleasure, as if your brain sees something fun, releases dopamine, and then you enjoy it. That's the popular version, but it's also a bit misleading. Because dopamine is not really the reason you enjoy something. It has a lot more to do with wanting, seeking, and moving toward action. And that matters, because a lot of people think their problem is discipline. They think, I know what I should do. I just need to force myself to do it. But often the real question is not about discipline at all. It's about what your brain has learned is worth moving toward. That's where dopamine comes in. Think about how easy it is to check your phone. You don't usually need discipline to open an app. You don't need a motivational speech. You just do it. Why? Because your brain has learned that there might be something rewarding there. A message, a notification, something new, something interesting. Even the possibility is enough to pull your attention. That's important. Dopamine is often less about reward itself and more about anticipation. It helps create that feeling of, this might be worth acting on. And once that system gets attached to something immediate, fast, and unpredictable, like social media, email, or short-form content, it can become very good at driving behavior. Much better, in fact, than vague long-term goals. And that's where discipline starts to struggle. Because discipline is slow. Discipline says, do the hard thing now because it will matter later. Dopamine says, this thing right here might feel useful, interesting, or rewarding immediately. You can probably guess which one usually wins at 10 p.m. when you're tired. That doesn't mean discipline is useless. It means discipline is often overrated as the main engine of action. Because most of the time, action doesn't come from gritting your teeth. It comes from one of three things. Something feels attractive, something feels easy, or something has become automatic. That's why people can be incredibly disciplined in one area and completely inconsistent in another. The issue is not that they suddenly became weak. It's that one behavior is supported by attention, cues, and reinforcement, and the other one isn't. Take exercise. A lot of people say they want to work out, but want in the abstract is not enough. If the workout feels far away, effortful, confusing, and unrewarding in the moment, discipline has to do all the lifting. And discipline is a terrible full-time employee. It burns out fast, it complains, it calls in sick. Now compare that to a behavior like checking your phone. Clear cue, tiny effort, possible reward. Repeat that enough times and you barely need to think. So when people ask, what drives action, dopamine or discipline? The more honest answer is, usually dopamine gets you moving. Discipline helps you stay pointed in the right direction when motivation dips. But discipline alone is rarely enough to build a life around. You need to make good actions more likely to compete. And that usually means designing them so your brain actually wants to move toward them. Not just morally agrees with them. This is where a lot of self-improvement advice becomes unhelpful. It treats good behavior like a character test, as if doing the right thing is mostly about being strong enough. But in real life, behavior is heavily shaped by what feels immediate, visible, and rewarding. So instead of asking, how do I become more disciplined? A better question is, how do I make the right action easier to start and more satisfying to repeat? That shift changes a lot, because now you're no longer relying only on force. You're working with motivation instead of constantly fighting against it. So what can you do with this? First, reduce the distance between the action and the reward. If a habit has no payoff for weeks, your brain won't naturally lean toward it. So give it a smaller, immediate reward. Track it. Make it visible. Pair it with something enjoyable. Let your brain register that this action leads somewhere. Second, lower the barrier to starting. A lot of actions fail before they begin because the starting cost is too high. Not the whole task, just the beginning. Open the document, put the shoes near the door, prepare the book, make the first step stupidly easy. Third, be careful what you train your dopamine system to chase, because every repeated behavior teaches your brain what is worth noticing. And if all your easiest rewards are fast, digital, and fragmented, deep work and slow progress will feel dull by comparison. Not because they are worthless, but because your brain has been trained to expect louder signals. That can be changed, but usually not by lecturing yourself. Usually by changing what you repeatedly expose yourself to and what behaviors you make easy. That's the real point here. Action is not driven by one magic force. It's a mix of biology, environment, learnt expectation, and sometimes plain old effort. But if you rely only on discipline, you're making the game harder than it needs to be. A better strategy is to build a system where good actions have a real chance of winning, where they are easier to start, more visible, more rewarding, and repeated often enough that they stop needing so much conscious effort. That's when action starts to feel less like a battle and more like momentum. If you're into these kinds of practical psychology breakdowns, consider subscribing. We try to make these ideas useful in real life, not just interesting for 5 minutes. We've also left a few resources in the description if you want to explore the topic more deeply in your own time. But for now, it's worth asking yourself one simple question. Not why am I so undisciplined? But what has my brain learned to move toward? That answer is usually a lot more revealing.